Hey, my name's Chris, and this is the final video in the series on adding new guns to NeoFPS. In the last video, we looked at adding the gun and ammo to the inventory system. So in this video, we'll be looking at the different ways to create pickups that add the items to a character inventory, and in the case of firearms, creating a weapon drop that lets the character drop it from their hands. So let's start simple and sort out a basic pickup for the new AK-47's 7.62 by 39mm ammunition. This will be a contact pickup that uses a trigger zone to detect a character walking over it, at which point it will add the item to their inventory. First up, we'll create a new object in the scene and give it a name such as pickup ammo 7.62 by 39.30. There we are. Now, if we reset the position, then currently it will be under the spawn point, so let's move it off to one side to work on. That should do it. Now, before we add any components, we also need to set its layer to trigger zone. And now we can add the inventory item pickup behavior. And as well as adding that behavior, we also gained an audio source component up here. So, let's quickly set that up. The audio clip we want to set to the ammo pickup sound. Output should be spatial effects, and play on awake should be disabled. Okay, looking at the pickup behavior, the consume result is what happens when all the ammo has been picked up. You can destroy the object, disable it to re-enable later from a script, or set it to respawn, which uses this duration here. So, I'm going to set it to respawn after 10 seconds, and make sure it spawns on awake here. The item prefab is the inventory ammo that we created in the last video. Drag that in to set it. And the last property we have here is the display mesh, which is the visual object that represents the ammo. So, we want to create a new child object of the pickup, call it render, and then we can set its layer to environment detail. For the geometry here, we can actually use the magazine mesh from the low poly FPS gun. Head on down to low poly FPS, components, meshes, guns, assault rifle, and then the assault rifle FPX. If we expand that, we can grab the assault rifle mag mesh here and drag it onto the inspector to add it to the selected object. Let's move it up a bit, and it's looking pretty pink right now. We can fix that by setting the material in the mesh renderer to guns material, which is the palette texture from the low poly FPS asset. And lastly, we can remove that mesh collider as we don't want collisions for this object. Back to the root. And now we can drag that new render object onto the display mesh property here. Now, we need a couple more components for this to work. First up is a sphere collider. Give it a sensible radius, like 0.25, and center it on the mesh, so in the scene it looks roughly right. Okay, lastly, we need to add a pickup trigger zone behavior. This just detects the trigger contact with a character, and tells the pickup behavior to do its thing. And that's it. Let's turn this into a prefab by dragging it into the demo folder, and sneakily delete the one from before, from when I messed up recording this earlier. And now we can hit play and test it out. So, there's the pickup. Let's switch to the correct gun, and then when we walk over it, our ammo went up to 60. Let's wait for the 10-second respawn. And pop. There it is again, and we can grab another 30 rounds. Cool. Next up, we'll create an interactive version of this. So, turning a contact ammo pickup into an interactive pickup only needs a few changes. Let's duplicate the contact pickup and rename the new object to show that this version is interactive. Drag it into the scene and delete the old one. Okay, so the first change that we have to make is to change the layer from trigger zone to interactive object, and we only want to do this for the root. Next, we'll reduce the radius on the sphere collider so it fits the magazine a bit better. Remove the pickup trigger zone, and remove the inventory item pickup too. The audio source we'll leave as is. And we want to add the interactive pickup behavior to replace the pickup behavior that we removed. Root will have been autofilled, and the item is the prefab object, just like with the other pickup. So drag that on. And lastly, we want this to be an instant interaction, so leave the hold duration at 0. Hit apply, and we're good to test it out. Okay, so there it is. Switch to the right weapon. And now if I walk over it, you see that nothing happens. Hit E though, and the ammo gets picked up. Simple as that. Okay, next up we'll add an ammo crate which can hold multiple types of ammunition. Right, ammo crates are a pretty common occurrence in FPS games. Here we're going to set up an interactive crate that can be used as many times as you like. The process is pretty similar to setting up an interactive ammo pickup, but we're going to make the crate a more permanent object in the world with bullet and character collision geometry. So, first up, let's create a new game object in the scene, and we'll call it Pickup Ammo Crate. Set the layer to Interactive Object, and position it somewhere sensible. Next up, we're going to add the key component, the interactive multi-pickup. And like before, this also adds an audio source, so let's quickly set that up. For the clip, it's Pickup Ammo. Output is Spatial Effects. Disable Play on Awake. For the multi-pickup, most of these properties are the same as the interactive pickup, but instead of a single item prefab, we have an array of items. We're going to duplicate our ammo pickup prefab, and we're going to rename it to full instead of 30. And then we're going to change the quantity to 300. Drag that onto the ammo crate. And now we have a pickup that will fill a character's inventory to max ammo every time. The replenish property here means that as soon as the ammo is consumed, it'll be replaced, so the crate can never run out of ammo. And lastly, the hold duration we'll leave at 0 so that the crate's used instantly. With that done, we need to add a box collider. We'll set its dimensions once we have some geometry to fit it to. And it needs to be set to isTriggerTrue in order to be interacted with. And since this is a large interactive object, we should set up some selection highlights. Currently the only option is the interactive object corner markers behavior, but shader-based options will be coming soon. The box collider should be the one that we just added. And the corner object is a prefab called Highlight Corner. And this object is just duplicated at the corners of the box collider and visible whenever we aim at the object. Okay, so now let's add some geometry to the crate. Create a new child object and call it Render. And another one, which we'll call Physics. The render object needs to be set to the environment detail layer, and then we can add a mesh filter and set it to the mesh called Prop Ammo Crate Open. Next up, add a mesh renderer, and to fix the pinkening, set the material to the demo facility palette. And that's what the crate's going to look like. Okay, since this is the detail geometry, we can also add a mesh collider with the default values, as well as a simple surface behavior. Setting that to gadget gives an alright spark and noise for the type of object we're creating. Cool. Now for the physics. Set the layer to environment rough, and we want to add another mesh collider. The mesh will set to prop physics, ammo crate, open. And then set it to convex since it's a simple shape. Okay, so now that we've got the geometry, all that's left to do is to fit the box collider to it. So for the centre, a Y of 0.38, and then the size 0.7, 0.75, 0.5, and that fits quite nicely for the sake of this tutorial. We just want the corners to be visible to demo it. All that's left to do now is to make a prefab from the object, and then try it out. So, there's the crate. If I walk over to it and use it, then suddenly I have 300 ammo. Shoot off a few rounds, and use it again, and back to 300. And that's that. So, next up we're going to take a look at adding a firearm drop for the AK. Firearm drops are a little bit more complicated to set up than the others, and that's because they're made up of two parts, the gun and the ammo. The drop needs to be aware of the amount of ammo in the gun as it's dropped, and the drop we're setting up here consists of both an interactive firearm pickup and a contact ammo pickup. Walking over the firearm will collect the ammo from its magazine, while using it will pick up the weapon. So, let's get started. And first up, we'll create a game object in the scene, and we'll call it Weapon Drop AK-47. Give it a sensible position, and set its layer to interactive object. Now, unlike the ammo pickups, we want this to be a physical object in the world that can be dropped and bounce around. To achieve this, we need to add a rigid body to the base and give it a sensible mass like 4 kilograms. And for the geometry, we want to use the model from the low poly FPS asset. So, low poly FPS, components, meshes, guns, assault rifle, and drag the whole thing onto the weapon object. Let's just move it up so that we can see it. So that's all good. Now we need to set its layer to small dynamic objects. And we do want that to affect the children too. Everything else can stay as default. Now for the physics, I'm just going to chuck on a box collider. I'm not going to be fussy about this, but for your own guns, you'll probably want to use a few colliders and put a bit more time into it. And that one will handle the gun collision, but I'm going to add one to the magazine too. And the default should be fine to demo it. So that's the visual sorted. Let's get the functionality set up. And the first thing we want to do is to add an interactive pickup behavior. That adds an audio source too, so to set it up, audio clip, this time we'll select the pickup weapon, output to spatial effects, and disable play on awake. Now for the pickup, let's set the hold duration to 0.5 so that it's not an instant interaction. For the item, we want to drag in our AK-47 prefab. There it is. Since this is an interactive object, we also need to set up the trigger collider. So, add a box collider. Set the dimensions to fit the weapon. And set isTrigger to true. Now, just like the crate, we want to add some corner markers. But in this case, it's picked up all the box colliders in the hierarchy. We need to make sure that it's only the trigger that we just added. Corner object we'll set to the highlight corners like before. And that's the pickup sorted. Using this in the scene, we'll add the gun to the character inventory, but there's some more steps to make this into an actual drop item. We need to add the modular firearm drop behavior. So this is the behaviour that handles the ammo count on dropping the gun, by modifying the ammo pickup that we'll add next. The rigid body and pickup have both been autofilled. But this ammo pickup property needs to be created like at the start of the video. So to do that, we add a new object to the drop and call it ammo pickup. Set its layer to trigger zones. Instead of the inventory item pickup from the contact ammo, here we need to add a modular firearm ammo pickup. There it is. This is the usual audio source, so clip to audio pickup ammo. Spatial effects. And don't blow on awake. For the ammo pickup, the weapon pickup property is the parent weapon. The ammo object we'll add in a second. The display mesh, we actually want to set the magazine on the gun property. And the collider delay is a brief delay that prevents you from picking up the ammo from the gun the moment you drop it. Right, another difference from the previous ammo pickup is that we're actually going to set up the inventory item here. Add an FPS inventory ammo behaviour. Then we grab our ammo type asset. And lastly, we set the quantity to 30. This is the default amount the gun will have when it's just placed in the seat. If it's dropped, that number will be overridden by the drop behaviour. Okay, back to the root, and now we can drag our new ammo pickup child object onto the modular firearm drop. And to get that pickup fully working, we need to add a sphere collider. Give it a decent radius, and position to match the magazine. Maybe a bit smaller than before, like 0.2. And finally, we need to add the pickup trigger zone, which detects and handles the trigger enter. So, that's now a fully functioning firearm drop. Let's create a prefab from that. And once we've set this as the drop object for our weapon, we can test it out. So, select the AK-47 first-person prefab in the project view. And then if we look at the inventory wieldable behaviour, then at the bottom of that, here, you can see the drop object. Drag our new weapon drop AK-47 in there, and we're good to go. So, there's the weapon drop. Walking over it picks up the ammo. Now, if we fire off a few rounds, and then drop the gun that we're holding, then when I pick that back up, you can see that we have the same number of rounds that we had when we first dropped it. We drop that again and pick up the original one now, then you can see that this gun is empty because we grabbed its ammo when we walked over it. And there you have it. Ammo pickups and weapon drops in NeoFPS. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, then please get in touch via the NeoFPS Discord server. You can also visit the neofps.com website for more information and documentation. All the links are in the description below. Have fun, and let me know how it goes.